What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Nambu. I don't know why I say it like snake, but it just reminds me of caribou. So, sorry. This is an FM synth. It reminds me a lot of FM8. There might be something out there on the market that's closer to that than this, but I'm going to be giving you a general overview of this synthesizer and be talking about some cool stuff about it and just being like, hey, let's dive into synthesis, because that's what we do here on the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, alckemy.com, book a lesson, like the video, subscribe. That one's free. Maybe. Leave a comment. Tell me how much you love me, perhaps. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what this does. It's an FM synth, and even though you cannot draw in your own waveform, it's got a lot of cool things that you can do. So direct your eyes over to FM, which is at the very top, and we can start with a general waveform. Now, what I like to do is I actually like to start from the F over here. And the reason why is because I like to work from the bottom up, because you can feed things into it this way. So if you start from here, I guess you can feed F into whatever or send this into a direct out, but I don't know. I just like to work this way. What's cool is that you can also change the template if you want to these different modes, but I find that I just leave the regular one, which is all the way over at the left. Yeah, it's more than enough. So with this, what's really cool is that, again, coming back up to the top, we've got different operator types. So we've got FM, oscillator, noise, texture, resonator, and filter. I want to talk about these two first. So there's actually no built-in filter under the effects. There's a filter on the delay, but it's not quite the same. But what you do is, if you want to filter something, then you send it as the last effect. Or something else that you can do is you can set this to FM, and then you can set E as a filter, perhaps, or any of these steps. And then you can have another signal going into this. And this is actually extremely handy because it's very easy to overdo FM synthesis. It's like, I'm saying, like, if you were to just even do something like this, it might already be too shrieky. I don't know. Oh man, I just got the idea for my next banger. I better write that down. So with that being said, though, there are a couple of different filter types that you have. You can kind of scroll through these: low pass, band pass, high pass, and a notch. And then if you want to modulate stuff, then you kind of just look out for this little guy that says mod, and you can assign it to your LFOs, your envelopes, sequence. There is a sequencer built in, keyboard tracking, velocity, or a built-in macro. So there's that. When it comes into the other stuff, I'm kind of jumping around a bit, but you can kind of have a somewhat multi-stage envelope generator. It's not quite a multi-stage envelope because it's kind of finicky. I would love there to be an actual true multi-stage envelope generator. And on that note, unfortunately, there's no randomization. But fortunately, if you're in something like Drambo, then you can just map a parameter and then kind of modulate it from there, which is pretty cool. So with that being said, again, you can modulate the output if you want to, and this works on all of the different operators, which gives us a lot of control to do some cool stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to E, and then we're just going to do something very simple. Actually, let's build a reese, because why not? Yeah! Alright, so the first thing that we want to do on this is we want to send F into the output. Okay, we've got just a sine wave. So as opposed to using a true saw, I'm going to actually kind of makeshift one and make it sound kind of interesting. So something kind of like this. It's kind of a soft saw. We can also add some feedback to it if we want. And even though you can't draw your own waveform, like, it still gives you a lot to work with, which I think is pretty cool. True FM synthesis, according to my research, is actually just sine waves. And then once you get out of using like other waveforms and stuff, then I believe it gets into phase modulation. So I think this is trying to like have a happy middle in between. Somebody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't care enough to be a nerd that much to have the right answer. That's just what I think for fun facts. So now that we have this, instead of sending E into F, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send E along with F. And now this sound should be a sine wave and a saw. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to make this a slightly different waveform. Kind of similar, but slightly different in just the way that this cuts. Now you can already hear that there's a weird kind of phasing that almost sounds like it's already tearing. So all we have to do is detune this a little bit. maybe a little bit more. I'm going to go to the fine and go to like 1.2. And we are off to the races. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to octave -1, octave -2, and we are good to go. So there's a lot of hidden features that are built in with this that you will not see unless if you click on every single menu. And so one thing that might stick out is if we hit preamp, then we actually have a couple of different options. We've got an EQ, we've got a saturator, a compressor. We're going to focus on that saturator right here and just give this just a little bit of gain in order to make this a little bit fatter. Yeah, this is a great starting point for different kinds of sounds as a whole. But now that we pretty much have shaped our super fat sounding reese, there's a lot of things that we can do. Now, unfortunately, because I set this from E to F, we're not going to be able to utilize the filters or the resonators, but we can try to add on top of it to see if we can do some extra stuff that could be interesting. So if we look at the signal chain, it's going pretty much like downwards and out, and really this outwards here means that if I were to send everything through this, they would be running in parallel. But the goal with FM is to send something into another signal to kind of like spread its waveform like a virus, if you will. And so what we can do is we can activate D, and now we can actually FM the rest of the signal with D respectively. So that sounded pretty cool, but let's explore some other options. Maybe what I can do is pop in a resonator and be like, all right, what this is kind of a physical modeling deal, and this is actually really cool. I didn't actually know about this. I don't even know if FM8 has this, but this is actually how you get some like really sick Sega Genesis sounds from the experience that I've had. But let's go ahead and send this. I think we might have to send something into this. Let's go ahead and mess with it and see what we can get. But there's some cool variation of sound that we can kind of draw from it either way. So let's take a look. Yeah, so that tells me that we need to send another signal into this. So let's go ahead and send C into D. All right, we broke it, so let's back off now. And for fun, we can actually move this downwards by sending this to LFO1, which could be fun. Pretty wild, right? So we can get into some really fun sounds this way, or we can swap this out for maybe even a filter here. So let's say we wanted to swap this to a notch and kind of let this sweep. Let's go LFO1 because I think that one's, or LFO2 because that's smoother. We can set it to kind of a low rate. So yeah, some really cool distorted sounds that you can get out of this. I guess it already has its own LFO built into this, if you will, and so that's why sometimes it's important to kind of just check out what's on here. But what's also cool is it looks like we've got some keyboard tracking. So if I were to drive this just a bit and maybe adjust the resonance, then maybe we'll get a drastically different sound. I see. So this is the envelope here is what that looks like to me. So let's go ahead and adjust this again and then move it. So yeah, I mean, just by moving all this stuff, there's a lot of different things that you can get into. As you can see, there's an LFO built in over this way that you can choose between different waveforms. You can expand this if you want to, and then there would be, I guess, your random LFO, but this can only control, I believe, the envelope. So I don't know, it's kind of weird how that's set up, but at the same time, it's nice that this stuff is built into this, that you can kind of move everything around. I do think that the anatomy of this synth is a little bit confusing, but it would be funny to, or it would be incorrect to say that you can't do a lot of really cool stuff with this. The envelope also has different mods. You can group everything into a specific envelope group if you want to. You can expand this to change the attack and release of each of these. But yeah, so some of the other things that we have, if you look on these little tabs right here, then that will give you some more contextual menus. So if we look at the envelope, there's a pitch envelope that's built in between two different types. If you look at the rate here, we can add some vibrato, or we can change the mod wheel if we want, or change the vibrato to the mod wheel rather. The chorus has some effects built into it. The delay has quite a bit. It's got different types. And then you can also filter the delay if you want to, and also high pass, so you've got a little bit more control on this. And then also on the reverb, you've got some high pass, low pass as well, so you can dial that in pretty nicely. And I actually like the way that the reverb and the delay sounds on here. It's not bad. So if I were to just turn that on, it's pretty lush. So yeah, the final thing that we can talk about is there's an arpeggiator built into this. It is somewhere within this menu here. I believe it's right here. There it is. And you can actually set an arpeggiator to kind of, well, do what you want. And then you can assign these to different programs, I guess, which I'm not really sure what that means, to be totally transparent. But it is cool that we can kind of turn this on and set this to... so if I were to change that to this guy, I think that what this means is that you can change it to several instances of this if you wanted to. So yeah, you can change the octave on this if you want to kind of make this jump. It doesn't have a whole lot of control, but it is at least kind of neat that you can kind of dive into if you're trying to create something specific. So you can set the swing, the octave, the accent, the gate, the staccato, and then you can set it to key and sync. And there's that if you are into it. For me, I'm usually doing this stuff with bass, or I'm actually just using a dedicated sequencer to figure out what kind of steps I want to get. But it is nice that it's built in, and yeah, can't really complain about that. So anyways, this is a deep dive into Nambu. Obviously, as you can tell, we're about 15 minutes in. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, especially if you're familiar with FM synthesis, but I definitely don't regret buying this. This was one of the first synths that I bought, and you can make some sick sounds with it, especially when you do processing in Drambo or something. But yeah, if you're in the market for an FM synth, then Nambu might be right for you. This video is not sponsored. Nobody paid me. In fact, I paid money for this. So there's that, but I like covering plugins on iPad because they're a lot of fun, and I love the interactivity and the touch interaction between them. So yeah, thanks everybody. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment. Let me know how your day is going if you got it this far, and consider supporting me on the channel. Bye everybody.